New Director 2026, Adrian Chiarella. We have the pleasure of welcoming our two incredible leads as well. Please help me welcome Joe Bird and Samantha Jennings. Mix it up, guys. Congratulations. Thank you. Such an honor to have this incredible film as our opening night. Just in the way of history, this is our first horror film to open new directors since A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. This amazing film. There was another film that I really fought hard for. Didn't quite, it was in the festival, but it didn't make it to opening night. And that was The Babadook. Your countrywoman, Jennifer Kent.
It was actually Causeway Films. Who produced this film. It's their very first film. That's their company.
A visionary company, visionary film, and certainly you follow in the footsteps of that incredible film. And I think it moved all of us incredibly when we first saw it. So thank you for sharing it with New York audiences.
Thank you.
So let's stick with horror. What drew you to the genre? Let's just start there.
I think it's a genre I've always kind of loved since childhood, really. I remember like sneaking down to secretly watch Nightmare on Elm Street when my parents were looking. And I think as a filmmaker, it's a genre that is so exciting because it's so visceral. Like you can affect people through their bodies and then you can reach their minds once you've done that. There's something very special about that. So yeah, I've always wanted to do something in this genre. I never felt like an expert in it. I think when you're a filmmaker, there's always other filmmakers who know genres better than you do. But it was just something I cared a lot about.
Well, I think that visceral quality is what draws us back, even though there's this tension maybe of like, what am I going to put myself through? But that visceral quality is what brings our entire being into the experience of watching the film. And it is a mechanism that so many truly great directors have used for social consciousness and raising people's awareness. So talk maybe a little bit about that mix.
Yeah, I think, you know, when I looked at horror movies when I was older and I was able to kind of actually study them properly and read about them, I realized horror movies are all about fear, whether they're supernatural or they're, you know, sort of more leaning on the kind of naturalistic thriller side. They're always about exploring fear. And I think that always kind of appealed to me. And I think when I knew I wanted to do a film about queerness, I thought, well, homophobia is a type of fear, right? And so why not do a horror movie that embraces that and explores that on every level, the externalized, the internalized, all of that sort of thing. So yeah.
And John, you have both been involved with horror genre before. Joe, I'll start with you. You were quite famously, at least for those of us that are fans, involved with Talk to Me, another great Australian horror film. Talk to us a little bit about diving in as an actor to something that you know is going to be so visceral.
Yeah, well, I think when I first read the script, kind of seeing just these different characters, the way that they, you know, connect to each other just through words, it was just something special. And then I think what's, you know, great about that connection is that when it comes to the visceral kind of horror stuff, you care about these characters and that produces the fear in you, right? And yeah, it's just all kind of connections, like the connections that these characters make with each other, you know, goes through then to the audience, and then, you know, hopefully they can care about us and, you know, not want us to die. Yeah.
And Stacey, you have, I read one coming up that you shot or are shooting, a Wolf Creek sequel.
Yeah.
So talk to us about that, as much as you can talk to us about that.
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't know if there is a whole lot, but yeah, we just wrapped up shooting that as of a week ago, right before I got on the plane to fly over here. Yeah, and that's been really fun. A very different type of horror. We're going from this kind of coming of age combination to something like Wolf Creek, which is like pretty hardcore slasher, go the entire time. So it's it's been a super cool experience and a different one for sure.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the local edge that Australia must play in this. I mean, certainly the setting for me, I mean, the very rural, the working class kind of setting, but also there's a far awayness, certainly for us that live in North America, say, to the idea of Australia. Is there something in the dust there that's making these work?
I mean, in this genre, I think it's really interesting. I think horror movies have always been such a big part of Australian cinema. I think it's something about being lost in a strange land that is quite terrifying. And we're able to do that with the kind of palette of these landscapes that we photograph. I think also there's something exciting about genre filmmaking for me, and in Australia, I guess we don't really have the rich genre tradition that you have here. So when we make a film, sometimes say you're making a rom-com or a thriller, you sort of get certain things set up for free and you can kind of move into the heart of the story a lot faster. I think the only genre we really have that tradition with in Australia is horror. You know, you get a jump scare and you hear some Australian accents and you're like, oh, I know what we're doing. So that kind of gives us a quick shorthand, and then I was able to go, okay, well now let's take it into something more personal and something a little bit more subversive around that. So so I think that's part of the appeal as well. But yeah, there is a very particular flavour to horror in Australia.
Having visited Australia once for a minute, I do recognize, especially in that opening scene, where you go from the snake, the scary snake and the frog, to the fake spider. The thing is, a lot of those things can actually kill you there, right? So that was part of it. But that opening, maybe just talk about that opening scene where you're kind of establishing your fear boundaries with each other.
Yeah, and it kind of establishing the characters is obviously the first time we get to see them hanging out. And I think that moment is them really just figuring each other out. This is one of the first times they've hung out before, and they're still learning this new relationship with each other. And I think there's definitely an element of wanting to be better than each other or beat each other at something. You see that with the whole rock throwing getting bigger and bigger, and once Niam kind of laughs at Ryan, he takes the opportunity to, make him the laughing point. So it was really fun to kind of play with that, the dynamic, and discover as they were as well.
It's kind of when we learn that Niam isn't going to be a pushover either, right? Like there's not going to be one that has more power than the other.
Yeah, well, I think that, from that opening scene as well, like kind of circling back to what I kind of mentioned before, is that, I mean, again, these boys are like, in denial about their feelings. They also have no one to speak to about that. And, that's often why, and it's not actually much dialogue in the film, really. And, especially in that opening scene, it's very, like, tension-filled, right? And in the warehouse, when you call it, like, they're kind of, doing that competing, and it's all, like, in the air until, obviously the kiss happens and whatnot, but yeah, it's just, everything has to do with just, the connection, I guess. I know I keep bringing that up, but it's just, yeah.
You have to have that connection, otherwise, like, to your point.
And quickly, going back to your setting question before, I've actually found out, so I'm from a place called Adelaide in Australia. We used to be the murder capital of the world, apparently. And we're also the city of churches. So,
Connected.
it's just a lot of coincidence.
You're born for this role.
Joe, I thank you, because my next line of questioning was around religion. So the movie is named for the book of Leviticus, or the book of homophobia, for those of us that were forced to study the Bible growing up. And the religious setting is obviously crucial to the plot and to setting the stage for the film. I found it, though, really interesting that it was intertwined again with this working class situation, right? That these were folks who were not of great means, but for whom the community and obviously the church, in as much as it was important. Talk to us about maybe that interlinking.
Yeah. It was meant to sort of represent exactly what you're saying. Like, this is a community that turned to these beliefs. But it was also sort of intertwined in the aesthetic of it as well. Like, we didn't. The look of the film that we discussed with our production designer, Beth Ryan, was one where we wanted this clash of sort of nature and humanity. And we deliberately didn't go for a church that was like an opulent, stained glassy kind of building. We found this church on the outskirts of Melbourne that had this sort of grey brick look to it, and then it kind of fit in with all of those kind of industrial boneyard buildings that we had. We wanted to create this feeling of like, where do these ancient edicts come from? Do they actually come from something in the universe, or do they come from each other that we impose them on ourselves? So that was something we all really wanted to explore.
And the film is specifically queer, right? The desire in the film is specifically queer, but it is also, I found, universal in its address of the scariness of desire, right? And it does feel like the generation of your characters and yourselves seems to be ready to embrace narratives or stories of queer desire as kind of, reflective of desire generally. Is that part of your intent?
Yeah, definitely. And that was always the intention, was not to, I absolutely wanted to speak to the queer experience. It's something personal to me. But as we were developing the story, as I was writing the script, and as I worked with the actors, and as we shot the film and edited the film, it was always in my mind that I wanted it to speak on that universal level and to be actually a story about overcoming the fears of your own feelings. I think it's something that every person who's going through the age that these characters are at experiences in some way or other, and so I wanted it to speak to everybody. And I think, I think that brings it back to the genre. I think the genre of horror speaks to young people because they're dealing with so much anxiety at that stage in their lives.
Gentlemen, I have read a lot as an ancient Gen X person that Gen Z folks have a certain amount of trepidation or fear, since we're talking about horror, of sex. And for me, I found a message in this film. I was like, oh, right. You kind of literalized the fear that I've been reading about in these accounts. But is any of that true, or were you able to channel anything essential about your generation into this?
I think the film, there's an element of that in the film that we're trying to kind of look at. They're trying to figure themselves out, and yet their desires are something that they're trying to come to terms with. I don't know if it's, that's something that we were like really focused on nailing. It's more about them coming into themselves and understanding their identity and allowing themselves to be vulnerable, which is really difficult.
And we had an amazing interview coordinator, Amy Cater, and she just coached us through the process of like how much flicker of desire or flicker of fear is going on, and what is going on? Why do we want to make out or whatever? Why do these characters feel so connected to each other and in love maybe? And I think we just have like great support around us, and and Stacey is just so open to allow me to do exactly just what I need to do, and so amazing directing as well.
Yeah, clearly. No, look, queer men of my generation, we were afraid of sex, but for very different reasons than I've read about in the case of Gen Z, perhaps. And that was, AIDS and the literal death, the plague that followed decision-making around that. This feels very different. This is an emotional fear, right? That Adrian, I don't know if you can speak to that.
Yeah, I think so, and I think it's it's something that we sort of talked about it, didn't we? And we talked about ways that the characters would navigate being able to express themselves around each other. And I think that the two characters were definitely very I developed them as characters that didn't speak much. There wasn't really a lot of dialogue, and that meant that it was all being expressed through their bodies. And so I think the challenge was, how do you sort of express repression through not speaking? And so
So I want to bring up the mysteriousness or perhaps the unhelpfulness of family, which is also part of this, or the deadly nature of family. But Mia Wasikowska is incredible in the film, even though her role is quite, unlikable and dangerous for the kids. But maybe talk about the cast that you worked with as well. You guys can start maybe.
Mia's just like amazing, and I moved from England to Australia when I was about 4, so I don't have any like immediate. I've got just my immediate family, like no extended. So I guess I kind of could relate to that that feeling of not really having much like other family and just like kind of being stuck in that you can only rely on each other. And so when it comes to like this dynamic with this mum who just like is dealing with her own grief and she's trying to find a way through faith, and I think that I mean, Mia is just such a likable person, so when I was like acting alongside her in this, I'm like, damn, this girl can act! But I think, well, I mean, even in rehearsal and like pre-production, we, Adrian was sending me and Stacey off to do like bonding stuff, and me and Mia went on a drive for like 40 minutes to like, we got lost on the road, it was this whole thing.
It ended up being way more than 40 minutes.
We just got stuck in the house.
Yeah.
But like on saying that though, it's just, I mean, every actor was just like, really open to like playing and having fun and just like that's what
It's the same, but in terms of cast, I mean, it was so fantastic. Nikki Barrett, one of the giants in Australia when it comes to casting, she's so amazing at knowing what's right and who's right. And I think even during the audition process, like there were a bunch of all these boys coming in, like in and out, all sorts, and we stopped for lunch at one point. And it was me, Joe, and Jeremy who were sitting down for lunch with the director and the producers. We were like, all right, this is looking good.
The correct table.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone was just so fantastic. Jeremy, he's I wish he could be here. He's so great, and I got to work with a lot of my stuff was with Joe, which I absolutely adore Joe, and it was an absolute pleasure to work with him. He's really wears his heart on his sleeve type of guy, and the film hinges on chemistry so much, and it just made it really easy to get to know him.
So, want to kind of wrap things up with the things that are left unsaid in the film, and I think it's an important strategy often, many types of filmmaking, but certainly in horror, and there are a lot of quote-unquote loose ends that feel intentional, but are also leading in terms of the audience and where does our mind go? One of them is, where's Dad, right? And for me, I had all kinds of ideas of where, name's Dad was or could be. Was that part of your thinking?
Yeah, it was something that I sketched out and then didn't really want to bring that into the story. I just thought we'll give people enough of a hint of what that is. I didn't want it to kind of get in the way too much. It wasn't really supposed to be about his relationship with his dad, but it maybe just gave a hint of who this family was and the fact that Mia's character clearly lost someone somehow before, and that this young man, this young teenager was all she had left, and that maybe that might have paid that might have been part of her decision to do what she did, and we just wanted to have a hint of that there,
Yeah, and I mean, like, speaking about kind of like other unsaid things, I mean, even kind of just the way that these boys will just look at each other and like say everything with their eyes and nothing with their words because silence is so powerful, and some like less is more sometimes, and I think, it's just, even, the end of the film where, you can see that the monster's still there, but it's not really explained to you. It's like, well, is it going to haunt these boys forever? Is it going to stay there? And I think, the best thing about films is that you get to ask any questions, and afterwards you're like, oh, okay, so what did that mean? And just like, it's just fun, to think about and stuff. And anyways.
Yeah, and of course, at the very end, there's that moment where Niam looks out the window and we see kind of Ryan. Yeah, just standing there. And to be honest, I don't fully understand what that means. But if I was to, make an interpretation of it, I think for me, something like that is a representation of the strength of their relationship and their choice that they're making. These two boys are like, would rather never leave each other's side again than be apart once.
I think you also just see them, mature and grow. Like, just as the film goes on towards the end, where they, I think they come to like mature, not childish anymore, maybe.
Yeah. I think they're just, Yeah, it's open for, sorry. It's open for everyone's interpretation and I think it was such a beautiful way. I love the ending of this film, and of course, Frank Ocean, self-control.
That is the perfect note to end on, but I have one point of privilege, and I mentioned this to Adrian. The half Asian thing going on.
Yes,
I'm half
yes.
Asian. I'm guessing that maybe you are, I don't know. But
I do this all the time.
What
It's
are they doing?
I'm just English. I've got like,
Just English?
I've got nothing.
Well, we're going to embrace you. Alex Russell was our closing night last year. I just think, Ilya and Shane have some competition in you guys. So, congratulations. Leviticus, everyone.